Breaking out of a prison is not easy feat. Many prisons have security features such as CCTV, motion detectors, barred windows, massive walls, barbed wire, electric fencing, and armed guards. Despite these and other obstacles, some prisoners will exhaust the limits of their wit and ingenuity and take every opportunity they can to escape. Prison breaks have been a part of our pop culture since before the days of 19th century Western outlaws. Like in Hollywood, it is sometimes difficult to decide who the good guys are and who are the antagonists. Regardless, we all love a good chase. Number 10. Jack Shephard. Jack Shephard enjoyed nice celebrity status in 18th century London for his multiple prison escapes. Though he apprenticed as a carpenter in 1723, he decided that a life of crime was a more rewarding way to make a living. In 1724, he escaped from prison 4 times. Shephard escaped within 3 hours of his first arrest. He broke through the ceiling and lowered himself to the ground with a rope made from bed sheets. 3 weeks later, he was arrested again. This time, he removed a bar from the window and performed the same bed sheet stunt. He was arrested a 3rd time and sentenced to death. On the day of his execution, he loosened a band from his window and escaped wearing woman's clothing. After his final capture, Shephard was secured with 300 pounds of iron weight and placed under constant surveillance. He was executed on November 16, 1724. Number 9. Odile Ince. Alfred George Ince was arrested for a jewelry robbery in 1953 and was sentenced to serve 12 years behind bars at England's Nottingham prison. Ince, who protested his innocence, managed to escape the prison after sneaking through the locked doors and climbing over a 20-foot prison wall. He was arrested again 6 months later. Ince filed a lawsuit claiming that the arrest was illegal and was granted a trial. At the courthouse, Ince had an accomplice smuggle in a padlock and install screw ices into one of the washroom stores. When 2 guys escorted Ince to the washroom and removed his handcuffs, Ince pushed the guys into the store and locked them inside. He was captured at the airport 5 hours later and was sent to Chelmsford prison. Within 12 months, Ince escaped from Chelmsford. He was captured again 2 years later and served the remainder of his sentence. Number 8. The biggest prison escape in British history. Her Majesty's Prison Mix was considered to be one of the most escape-proof prisons in all of Europe. Each of the prison blocks were surrounded by 15-foot fences, 18-foot concrete walls, and solid steel gates that opened electronically. This Northern Ireland prison housed many Irish Republican Army prisoners that had been convicted of violent offences. On September 25, 1983, 38 RA prisoners escaped from the Mace prison shortly after 2:30 p.m. The prisoners took control of their H block using guns that had been smuggled into the prisons. At 3:25, a truck bringing food supplies was overpowered. The driver's foot was tied to the clutch and the driver was forced to drive out of the prison. 19 of the escapees were caught within several days of the escape, while some of the escapees were eventually found and extradited. Those remaining have been given amnesties due to the politics in Northern Ireland. Number 7. Pascal Payette. In 1997, Pascal Payet participated in the robbery of a Banque de France armored vehicle, which resulted in the death of one of the guards. On October 12, 2001, he escaped from a prison on a hijacked helicopter. In 2003, he orchestrated the escape of 3 of his fellow accomplices with the help of another hijacked helicopter. He was eventually caught and sentenced to 30 years in prison for the 1997 murder, 7 years for the 2003 escape, and another 6 years for his own escape in 2001. Payet became one of the most closely watched prisoners in France and was transferred to different prisons every few months. Despite these precautions, on July 14, 2007, 4 masked men hijacked another helicopter and facilitated the escape of Payet from a prison in Grasse. 2 months later, he was captured again in Mataró, Spain. His current whereabouts are a well-kept secret. Number 6. Richard Matt and David Sweat. On June 6, 2015, Richard Matt, 48, and David Sweat, 34, escaped from the Clayton Correctional Facility in Dannemora, New York. Joyce Mitchell, a 51-year-old prison tailor shop worker, developed sexual relationships with both inmates, provided them with smuggled shoes, asked them to kill her husband, and planned to flee with the violent pair to Mexico. Richard Matt and David Sweat used power tools to cut holes in the back of their adjacent cells, which led to a 6-story high catwalk that provided access to various pipes and tunnels. After cutting into a 2-foot wide pipe, they traveled 400 feet inside the pipe and escaped through a manhole in the town of Dannemora. Joyce Mitchell, who had planned to radio voice with the pair and provide a gateway vehicle, was nowhere to be found. Police killed Matt on June 26, and Sweat was captured 2 days later. Number 5. The Great Escape. Stalag Luft Hill was a German-run prisoner of war camp that housed captured Air Force personnel during World War II. Plans for the mass escape of hundreds of prisoners began in the spring of 1943. 3 tunnels, condemned Tom, Dick, and Harry, were dug 30 feet below the surface. Pumps were built to push air into tunnels. Lights connecting to the prison's electrical grid were installed. The prisoners even installed a small rail car system to facilitate the digging process. On the moon's night of March 24, 1944, 200 prisoners attempted to escape. Instead of leading to a nearby forest, the tunnel opened just short of the tree line and close to a guide tower. The 77-man through the tunnel was spotted by one of the guards, and the escape was quickly foiled. Only 3 prisoners managed to escape. 50 prisoners were killed and the rest were captured. The Taliban tunnel. In late 2010, the Mujahideen began work on a 1,000-foot tunnel in the city of Kandahar with the hopes of freeing hundreds of Taliban insurgents. The tunnel, which took 5 months to dig, bypassed government buildings, watchtowers, barriers topped with razor wire, and went through the concrete floor of an Afghan prison. On April 25, 2011, 480 prisoners crouched to freedom in less than 30 minutes. The Taliban had acquired keys prior to the escape, which are used to open the cells of their friends. On the other side of the tunnel, minibuses were waiting to drive the hundreds of the escapees away from the heavily guarded area. It is likely that some of the prison guards were either bribed or politically motivated to facilitate the escape. The only thing more remarkable than constructing a 1,000-foot tunnel lined with a strong rubber ventilation tube is that nobody managed to stop it from happening. Number 3. Shoaib Bok, the Korean Houdini. Shoaib Buck is a 53-year-old man, a criminal with over 20 years behind bars and a yoga expert. Choi first escaped custody 25 years ago by slipping through the bars of a bus that was carrying prisoners to jail. He was captured 2 days later. Choi decided to practice yoga during most of his 2 decades in and out of jail. On September 17, 2012, he was ready to pull off an even more remarkable escape. When the guys fell asleep, he covered his pillow with a blanket, making it appear that he was still on bed, and applied skin ointment over his torso. He then scaled through the tiny food slot at the bottom of his cell and escaped the prison. He was apprehended 6 days later and placed in a cell with an even tinier food slot. It seems that yoga for some isn't just a popular way to exercise. Number 2. Sobibor, the Nazi Germany death camp. During World War II, the Nazis would execute 10 prisoners for every person who attempted to escape the extermination camps. By 1943, rumors had begun to circulate that the Nazis were intending to close the camps and exterminate all of their prisoners. Leon Fredner and Alexander Paske, prisoners at Sobibor, decided that being killed while trying to escape was better than being murdered in a gas chamber. The plan was to have every prisoner attack at once, kill the SS officers, and hope that the Ukrainian guys will retreat. On October 14, 1943, 9 SSS officers and 2 guards were isolated and killed. Unfortunately, a Ukrainian guard found one of the dead Germans and sounded the alarm. Around half of the 400 prisoners attempted to flee were shot and killed. The Germans then exterminated the remaining 300 prisoners and closed the camp. Only 58 of the escapees survived the war. Number 1. Frank Abgenia. Frank Abgenia is the notorious conman portrayed by Leonardo DiCaprio in the film Catch Me If You Can. Abgenia committing prank fraud and successfully impersonated pilots, lawyers, and doctors as a means of avoiding detection and inevitable imprisonment. In 1969, an Air France flight attendant recognized him and informed the police. He spent 6 months each in French and Swedish prisons before being extradited to Africa. On arrival at the JFK airport, Abgenia escaped the plane and fled to Canada, but he was quickly apprehended in 1971. Abgenia escaped a federal prison in Atlanta, Georgia. One of the Abgenia friends supplied him with a fake prison inspector card and a forged FBI business card. He then convinced the guys that he was an undercover prison inspector who desperately needed to contact the FBI. Abgenia called his friend, walked out of the prison, got into a car, and drove away.